Hey guys, Crewman here, and this PC is its own vibe. This right here is my new LAN gaming rig. I wanted something powerful yet easy to store, and I wanted it to have other uses when I wasn't going to LAN with it. So I give you my LAN rig / my 1080p test bench. So let's start with the thing that everybody sees right here. This beautiful 3080 right here. This was originally a mining GPU. It was a 3080 blower, and the blower, shroud, and the fan were taken off so it could be easily shoved into a mining case. It was actually given to me by a viewer of mine to play with / test, and he said I could just keep it, and I said thank you so much. So I was trying to find what to do with this because I didn't think it was worth mining on. And then I realized I could take one of those $15 fan shrouds from Amazon, wire it up to I think it's like a $5 fan splitter. And the reason I do this is because this knob right here lets me control the fan, and these things can get loud, let me tell you that. Wire it in, basically tape it into the GPU, and then use packing tape right here to basically force the air right through the heatsink and out the front. So I basically remade the blower for an additional, I think the whole thing cost me 20 bucks. Yes, I know you guys are going to say, Krootman, this fan is super loud. Well, when you undervolt this thing to the max, you can get this thing from like 300 to 325-ish watts. You can get this thing all the way down to like 220-ish watts, give or take. And I can tell you that you can barely hear this thing running. So let's talk about the rest of the build. This is a 5600X on an ITX motherboard that I've had forever. I think I got this thing for a really good deal. A Wraith Stealth, I think these things are called. It lights up, it's neat, and it was also free. Some old RAM. I think this is like 2400, 16 gigs, which gets the job done. This Open Benchable, which I've had forever, I think I paid like $30 for it. So a lot of this PC I basically got for insanely good deals. And then the last thing I needed was a ITX power supply, one of those mini power supplies. And these things cost a lot more than you think. But I was able to get this 850 watt for $750 shipped. I think I got it so cheap because it was missing. It was used and it was missing the SATA cables, which I don't need because this thing's got a 1 terabyte M.2, which I got for free in a big lot. So this is the perfect LAN PC because you know what else I can do with it when I don't need it to be a LAN PC, right? I can take off the 3080 like you see right here, and we're going to have to get back here. I don't want to break it. I can take it off like this, and we can pull out the wires. And then you have an open air. Well, whoops, you gotta let me get. I don't use zip ties anymore, guys, because they're bad for the environment and they cost money when you can buy Velcro ties and cut them in thirds. Anyway, you can see right here, I've got to unplug this fan header. This fan uses like 15 watts total, so I don't mind splitting it. And you can see the GPU right here hooked up. The fan is hooked up to an adapter, which is hooked up to the fan header. So it has multiple uses. So when I'm not going to LAN parties, which actually I talked to my buddies and our goal is to go a lot more. We're going to try to do them once or twice a month, actually. When I'm not doing LAN parties, I will be using this as my 1080p test bench. And this is basically the reason why it has a 5600X and crappier RAM on it, because I think that kind of replicates what most 1080p gaming PCs would be using right now, as you can get 5600Xs for almost less than $100 now. Maybe in the future, I will upgrade this to a 5800X3D if I can find one to repair, and then maybe I'll upgrade the RAM to 32 gigs if I find a good deal on it. So maybe we'll do that in the future, but check this out. This definitely has a vibe to it, right? Like this whole PC has a vibe to it. And I think that's my favorite part of this quote unquote LAN PC, right? Because it just has a vibe. when I take this to a buddy's house, and the best thing about LAN parties is sometimes you meet new people. You got friends who bring their friends over, and it's just a great experience to get together with a bunch of gamers. And when I bring this sucker, they're gonna go, "What is this?" And the story time will, then you can tell some good stories, have some good laughs. It's what it's all about. And by the way, look at how easy this is to plug in. And you see right here, it really does. It takes me about 10 seconds to install this puppy, right? And I can just basically use my zip tie, my Velcro tie. By the way, I recommend Velcro ties now over zip ties. They are definitely better for the environment, guys. And as tech users, we should strive to somewhat do better by our environment. And I do have Wi-Fi antennas to put in. Oh, and let me show you how much this thing weighs, because portability of a LAN rig is paramount. So look at how much this puppy weighs. I don't know if you guys can see that number. Let's try to... It's 10 pounds. This baby weighs 10 pounds. You pair this with a portable 1080p or 1440p monitor, which I am in the process of trying to source out, and that's it. You basically can almost put it in a little box and go, or you could just carry it. Look, I'm holding this with one hand. See, it's not going anywhere. Enough of that. How does a super undervolted 3080 pair with a bunch of crappy RAM and a 5600X? How does it game? Well, let's get into the benchmarks, and then I'll give you some final thoughts about my vibin' LAN PC. All right, so let's get into the benchmarks real quick. As I do benchmarks on GPUs, I generally do upscaling technology off, as I'm not a fan of it right now. I only did 3 games. I did Call of Duty to represent the esports style games, Cyberpunk 2077 to represent the high-end kind of single-player game that pushes the PC to its limit, and Helldivers, as that one is pretty much CPU bound, and I wanted to see how the 5600X worked with the 3080. So let's get to it. All right, so here you can see I ran the benchmark for COD. This is with the 3080 undervolted, and you can see we're getting about 89 FPS in the benchmark on average. Now let me show you the 3080 at stock when I take the undervolt off. Here you can see the stock 3080 settings, and we have about a 5 FPS increase, or maybe a basic kind of a 4% increase. So honestly, not really noticeable, which is pretty crazy to me considering you're saving about 100 or so watts on the performance of the GPU. So let me show you what it actually looks like in-game, because in-game FPS is a little different from the benchmarks. Here you can see in-game. I played a few games on this thing. I was averaging about, I want to say, 110 to 130 FPS. It kind of just depended on the map and what was going on. Also, the one thing I did want to talk about, the temperature of the GPU was around 71 to 72, which is pretty impressive because when you consider how loud these blower style fans are, I had this thing, I think, at about 20% power. And I didn't want to increase it as these things get really loud and they have a high pitch that I really didn't want to hear. So being stable at around 70 to 72 C is more than acceptable for me considering the circumstances of the GPU. So let's move on to Cyberpunk 2077. All right, so here you can see the settings that I used. I turned all frame gen and resolution scaling off. I had ray tracing on medium, path tracing off, and this is in 1440p resolution. You can see that I hit 40.97 FPS, which is more than playable in my opinion, especially considering that it's only a single player title. And I prefer looks over FPS, and I want to show you what it looks like when we turn off the undervolt and go back to stock. And you can see it's basically the same in Cyberpunk 2077, basically no difference, which is really nice. Again, we save about 100 watts, and we don't really lose any performance in terms of Cyberpunk. Now let me show you how it runs in-game. Here's some in-game settings. I like to use this area I have saved because there's a lot of lights going on. There's a lot of, you can get a lot of people in the area, and I can zoom in and out and see how the game performs. And we're getting about 41 FPS which is similar to the benchmark. The GPU definitely is running hotter. It's running in the high 70s in this game, so I'd have to turn the fan up a little bit, which I wasn't prepared to do. I was playing this, I think, for maybe like 15 minutes, and it got to about 76C, which is on the hotter side. I'm okay with it, and I could just turn the fan up if I really needed to, but I was trying to keep it as quiet as possible. So let's move on to Helldivers 2. The reason I'm showing you Helldivers 2 is because it's CPU bound, and I wanted to see how the 5600X interacted with the 3080. And honestly, I had no issues. I was getting about 80 to 85 FPS at 1440p with graphics maxed, which is perfectly acceptable, as you really don't get that much more FPS. Even in 4K on a 4090, I'm still getting about the same. Now, obviously, it's 4K, not 1440p, but the specs of my 4K machine are a lot different than this one. That is perfectly fine FPS. So as you can see, the benchmarks are great. Now, finally, I want to show you how loud this thing is, because like I said, those fans can be really loud, and I know people want to see the decibels. So I want to show you a comparison of my regular gaming PC in a normal case with normal fans versus the open air frame rig with the blower. Alright, so here is a decibel app I downloaded on my phone, which is actually very accurate, as I've used it in some other real world use cases. And you can see this is the blower style fan on my 3080 right there. So our average is about 52. I would ignore the minimum and the maximum. I ran this for, I don't know, like 5 minutes just to get some kind of average. And I want to compare it with, on the right, what's going to be my standard gaming PC. This is my 4090 7800X 3D gaming PC. It only has 3 fans on it, and I do my best to keep it as quiet as possible because it's what I use every day. And you can see that we've got about 50.68. Now, it does have a case, so I basically put them the same distance away from each other in terms of the GPU and the case, so I would think that they're pretty accurate. But you can see that the blower fan is very quiet. Now, like I said, because it's turned down so low, your GPU is going to run pretty hot, and my 4090 in my case runs, with the fans at like 20%. It basically runs at like 65 to 68C, which you really can't ask for better temps when you're gaming. But yeah, you could see that it is very usable, and you're not going to make everybody go deaf as long as you keep that fan low on the 3080. And there you have it. You can really do anything if you put your mind to it. I'll put a link down below for the fan and the fan controller. But yeah, I love this mess of a good story. Like I said, this PC has its own vibe. And you can feel how hot it is. Honestly, with how low the fan was, I mean, I could definitely crank this fan up. So if I cranked it up, obviously the temps would be better. But low 60 or high 60s, low 70s is perfectly fine for this thing. Especially since I'm not even going to be using it that much. But like I said, I love it. It's definitely cool, and it's definitely an idea for you guys if you want to save money buying old crypto mining GPUs and getting creative with how you make them, how you cool them. Remember, a PC doesn't have to look good to work great. Obviously, having a good PC is cool, and you want it to look nice, but I don't know, guys. I think this looks nice in its own kind of way. So that's it for this video. I hope you really enjoyed this video. Thank you for watching. Please like and subscribe, and I'm sure this is not the last time you'll see this GPU. Definitely not the last time you'll see this bench, but for sure not the last time you'll see this GPU. Alright guys, that's it. Thanks for watching. Please like and subscribe for more awesome content like this. Crewman out.